Hello, everyone. Here's Julius Cesar again. Today we have a very fascinating guest to talk to, Mr. Mark Baker, also known as Guru Anaerobic on Twitter or X, where he daily posts many takes on different subjects like exercise, how to be healthy on every age, and other more philosophical topics about society, family, work, money, and much more. I've been following Mark for several years now, and I'm very grateful for his writings, especially his series of books called Gang Fit, where he presents a lot of his unique approach to life, and we're gonna discuss that later. So, Mark, welcome. I know it will be way more interesting if you introduce yourself and tell us what are the subjects that you like to write about every day on X.
Julio, thank you for inviting me on this podcast. I'm honored. Thank you very much. Um, the things I basically talk about, or the thing I'm mostly, the underlying thing is essentially freedom in designing your own life. And I discovered quite early on when I was young, I didn't like work, not because I was lazy, but I just felt trapped. And I think there are millions of people like that. That feel trapped with a 9 to 5. I know these days it's not so much 9 to 5. People are working different hours and what have you. People are working from home. But for me, it was just about not having the freedom. It sounds a bit juvenile, but you're not accepting responsibility. But it was not having the freedom when I wake up to decide what I wanted to do during the day. So I couldn't go out my front door and turn right because every morning, Monday to Friday, I had to go out my front door, turn left, go to the station, do the commute, arrive at the office, and then come back 8 hours later, come out of the station, turn right, go back home. And after a few years of that, and not long after my daughter was born, actually, I decided to jack that all in. And not because I'm lazy, but because I just didn't like being employed. First of all, I thought it was my job. My first job was working for a bank, and I worked for a bank for 2 years. And then I worked for a civil service for a while, and I worked for a marketing company, direct marketing. Each time I thought, it's a job I don't like. I sort of realized it wasn't the job, it was actually being employed I didn't like. And I think these days there's more now with the internet. I didn't have the internet when I was younger. It would have been good if it had been there when I was young. But the internet now gives just a normal person, my background's a normal person, just a working class family, single parent, working class family. Uh, and I think people like us now have got more opportunity than ever to escape, well, what I call escaping entrapment, which is basically living a life you don't want to live. Whatever that means to you, to me, it meant I didn't want to be employed. I just felt shackled by that. So essentially, my Twitter account is essentially about freedom, but it's also about health as well, because I've been a competitive athlete. And the overarching thing really is that you can't have freedom without health. Okay, health is intrinsic to freedom, especially as you get older, because once your health starts going, then you're no longer free because you've got problems. And I think it was Naval Ravikant said on X, initially, I think he coined it that, when you're healthy, you've got 100 problems. When you're chronically ill, you've got one problem. So intrinsic with being free is also being healthy. So those two things. So everything I've written about really is about either freedom, personal sovereignty and designing your own lifestyle, and also being healthy and being fit.
That's
So,
interesting. Yeah, I think
those two
the
things fit together for me really well.
yeah, I think the hook that caught my attention in your account, when I found you, it was like 2019 or something. I was looking for someone to give me advice about exercise, but I wasn't looking for like a personal trainer with a 20 something, a guy full of muscles, but for how long have been doing that? Is that sustainable or not? I don't want to learn from that guy. I want to learn from something, so for someone different. Like, and when I found your account, I thought, this is the guy I want to learn about exercise because his ideas passed through the time, and it's obviously he knows what he's doing with exercise because he's not young anymore and he's very fit. He's way more fit than most of the people are in my age. So that was what caught my attention. And when was that? When that came into your mind and you started to talk about that?
Well, I've always liked exercise. My dad wasn't around when I was young. He left when I was like three, I think. So, and when I was a young teenager, 13, 14, I used to read a lot of Marvel comics. And, you know, you're either DC or you're Marvel. So you're either Batman and Superman or you're the Hulk and the Fantastic Four and the Avengers, one or the other. I was in the Marvel world. And of course, all the characters had superpowers. They had super strengths. Quicksilver was very fast. You know, Hulk was very strong. You know, Thor had his hammer. So they all had these amazing powers. And so I was like, for a few years, I was reading all these Marvel comics and things, and also reading the Knights of the Round Table and stuff like that. And, you know, and Ulysses, you know, and things like that. So it was about people, you know, heroic, heroism, bravery, courage, but also physical strength as well. And then I drew a lot as well. So I was drawing a lot of the characters. So I learned how to draw muscles and things like that. So I was always interested in exercise from really when I can remember. So I always kept fit, and this was just in me, you know. And I've always liked exercise. It's never been a chore. It's something I like doing, and you know, people express themselves. I'm in my daughter's gallery. She expresses her the things she wants to say through art, and for me, it's like expressing myself through the physical side. You know, part of myself through the physical side, and and then, you know, I kept fit and everything. And then I started competing in athletics for 800 meters and whatever when I was in my 20s. I just kept fit, first of all. And then in my late 20s, my girlfriend said, well, why don't you go to the track, you know, and join a club? And I thought, oh, okay, I'll go and have a look. And, you know, joined a local club, athletics club, and started competing at 800 and everything. And then I went into the masters scene when I was 40. So I was doing sprinting. I did sprinting from 40 to 50. And so exercise is a thing I'm always going to do. Some people compete. When they stop competing, they go to seed and they put on weight. That will never happen with me because competing was secondary, really, to the idea of feeling fit and healthy and strong and physically capable. And that will always be the case. And it's sort of morphed now because I'm older. I'm 63 now. Because I'm older now, it's about exercise for health and
Mhm.
feeling good and remaining robust and fit. So it's not about how much deadlift can I lift, you know, my maximum bench press. It's now about being healthy. So, you know, be strong, be aerobically fit, still quite fast, all these things. And because like said earlier, you know, if you're unhealthy, if you've got a chronic illness, and unfortunately now I'm in my 60s, I know quite a few people my age and who I've grown up with who aren't very well.
Mhm.
And that's horrible to see. And I've got a daughter, I've got two grandchildren, and I still want to be healthy and around and physically capable. And it feels great.
Mhm.
It feels great to be older and to be
Yeah.
fit. You don't have to be like mega fit, you know.
Mhm.
You just you have the fitness where you can just enjoy life.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's very interesting.
And
You have a
you
book
know,
called, and the title is awesome, which is Six Pack at 60. And I like this idea because it shows how free can you be in your 60 from any health problems, and you can still explore, you can still be creative, you can still uh, think about other things other than your healthy. And
yeah,
yeah, this
I think
is
so.
so interesting.
I think so. You know, perhaps when I'm 80, I'll do 8 pack at 80 or something like that. 100 pack, 10 pack at 100, you know, something like that. All it is really is about, I've written a PDF about functional capacity. It's not
Mhm.
for me, it's not really about longevity because a lot of that is genetically bounded at the moment. I know Brian Johnson is spending his $2 million a year on Don't Die
Hmm.
and everything. But for me, 95% of it, which is fine, 95% of it is sleep, exercise, and diet, being outdoors a lot and
Yes.
sun, those sort of things. And the other things, which are like family, the social side, and keeping mentally active and all those sort of things. So I don't think, I'm not interested in like running marathons still, 2.5 hours and stuff. It's just being generally fit and healthy. And I find it very easy.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not a chore for me to remain lean or and active. I just find it very easy. So for me, it's normal. And I've spent the last 30 years with athletes as well. And a lot of them are older now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they're basically all like me.
Hmm.
So it's difficult because then when you see the normal, you go down the high street and see the normal population, in their 50s and 60s, a lot of them are quite decrepit.
Yes.
And it's difficult for me to get, because I just feel normal
Hmm.
because the people I know are like me. So I just like feel normal because this is how I've always felt. And so it's not a chore for me to have a six pack of 60. I'm not obsessed with my diet and I'm not, whatever. So it's just normal. And I think once you've got to a certain level, it's easy to maintain it. Well, we know that. So I've just like maintained it really.
Hmm.
Uh, the difference that I have now from when I was an athlete is that I don't train as much because you have to avoid injury because you don't want injury because it sets you back. And
Yes.
as you're older, it takes longer to recover from injury and you lose more fitness and all the rest of it. So for me now, I use a soft target training approach, which is basically I do less training. So, and you flirt less with the risk of injury through less training. So I'm not going to train like I did as an athlete, in my 20s and 30s because I'll just be burnt out and injured. Um, but yeah, essentially going back to your original point, my X or my Twitter is essentially me just ranting about freedom, health, independence, personal sovereignty, and a bit of nature thrown in, some trees and foxes and flowers and stuff like that, which I like as well.
Hmm.
And a bit of science maybe, and basically abusing people every now and then. That's all great.
That's great.
So
Uh,
yeah, some fitness accounts are all about fitness, but I'm
yes,
not interested in just talking about
it's
fitness,
totally
which I think
boring.
maybe alludes to what you said before. My account isn't only about fitness
Yeah.
because that gets a bit boring after a while. So I'd like to talk about other things as well.
Yes.
You know,
It's like fitness, but in a more philosophical level than just how exercise should I do to increase my biceps or something. You never talk about this. You talk about a general
really.
idea.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm not really talking about, you need to do so many sets of so many reps and you need
Mm.
to do incline dumbbell press or you need to do these particular types of rows because that doesn't really interest me.
Yeah.
And, it's maybe more a global thing. I might mention specific sessions, but I just look at the health and fitness and lifestyle as a global thing as
Yeah.
opposed to specifics of, I can talk about specifics because obviously when I was training, I was doing specifics,
Hmm.
and particular
Sure.
sessions and everything to achieve a certain goal or a certain time. So I can talk about that, but it's to me, it's more well, as I say, it goes back to freedom. You just,
Yeah.
as you get older, if you're unhealthy, you're unfit, and all the rest of it, you're ill, you're basically in this straitjacket.
Hmm.
What I say is that your life becomes flatter. You want more variation. So the fitter, when you're fit and you're healthy, you can still have a varied, physically active lifestyle. You can still walk upstairs. So one of the things I've said, that I like to keep in touch with the extremes, physical extremes, speed, strength, that sort of thing, agility, because once you lose the extremes, the easier becomes harder. So
Yeah.
for me, if I can deal with extremes, then I can deal with the easy. Eventually, I mean, I saw a couple in the National Trust House in Somerset a couple of years ago, and they must have been in their 70s, and there was this small slope on the grass and they literally had to pull each other up this small slope, grass slope, which is 4 or 5 feet, 45 degrees perhaps. And the man, he took like 3 or 4 attempts to get up this slope, and his wife had gone up, and she had to pull him up. And so it's essentially about, that you stay healthy enough so you can deal with the variation of the environment, whatever that throws at you, whether it's a hill or downs or stairs or getting up from a chair, things like that, or sneezing or coughing and not breaking a rib,
Hmm.
stuff like that. Or if you fall over, you can catch yourself, just fall, and you're flat in your face and your arms are strong enough to, so that you don't fall in their face, things like that. So
Yeah.
it's the idea, I think, of my account is just being able to, and you mentioned earlier on about, taking advice from 20-year-olds. Now there are, I've learned a lot from younger people,
Hmm.
and in on X about health. Who've got maybe, it's possible, you can, when you're older, you can become a bit petrified and fossilized in your beliefs and ideas. So it's good to, I say that it's good to interact with younger people,
Hmm.
and their ideas about health and fitness or anything, because, there are certain things they know which I don't know, and I want to still keep learning. The thing is, of course, when you're young, you have the superpower of youth. Okay. I mean, if you could put the
Yeah.
superpower of youth, in a bottle, you'd be a billionaire overnight because it's such a powerful thing. So you may not even know you're making loads and loads of mistakes because those things don't appear because you're young.
Yeah.
But when you're old, if you start making mistakes with exercise and things like that, because you're going to feel it the next day, or that, whatever. But the superpower of youth means that you can make a ton of mistakes and you're okay. So I do listen to younger people and next, but I think you have to start, what are some of those young people? What are they going to look like when they're 50 or 55?
Yes, that's a
You
problem.
know, I think the only thing is, so I'm not saying I've done everything right and I know whatever, but I think the problem with younger people is not that they don't know, but they haven't been tested over time to see if their
Yeah.
theories work for them,
Yeah,
so
for
that's the
sure.
difference.
That's a powerful idea. Time tests everything.
Of
So
course it does.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
tests everything. It
Yes.
will challenge your beliefs, it will
Yeah.
challenge your beliefs. Some things, but you can never be perfect, and no one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes and everything, and time will tell. I mean, my
Yeah.
father had type 2 diabetes, and when he was in his 70s, he got both legs amputated because of diabetes. So I learned very young that, I wanted to adopt a certain lifestyle because diabetes is predisposed on my father's side. They've all got diabetes. On my
Yeah.
father's side, back in Mauritius, the whole family have got diabetes, aunts, uncles, cousins, blah, 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 and everything. And I thought, okay, well, diabetes is like, I mean, it's an epidemic, but it's an insidious killer. Don't go
Yeah.
from okay to suddenly terrible the next day. And in a sense, that's what makes it so insidious because it happens over time. So you don't even really notice. You don't
Yeah.
even really notice until one day you wake up and you've got all sorts of problems, but they've been going up to that point for like 20, 25 years. So for me, I realized quite young that that's not an older age that I wanted because I saw my dad suffer. So I was always interested in exercise, but when I got to my late 20s, early 30s, then I became more interested in diet and health and just generally, because I don't want diabetes. I
Yes.
don't want whatever. But even so, I still
Yeah.
don't know myself what will be the case when I'm 70, 75.
Sure.
Maybe I'm not doing the right thing, but at the moment it seems to be okay.
Hmm. For sure.
But maybe when I get to 70s, I'll think, oh, I need to change something. I don't know. So you
Yeah.
have to remain a little bit humble that you don't know everything, and there are known unknowns and there are unknown unknowns, and just navigate life as you age. But you will
Mhm.
make mistakes, but also learn from people, all people, older people, younger people, and everything. But yeah, the superpower of youth has gone for me. So, if I'm going to make a mistake, I don't want to make it for too long.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, you know,
That's true. So, one thing, I'm really grateful to you because during COVID, uh, everyone was so scared of going outside, meeting their closest friends and family. And I think I found your account during that time, like 2019.
okay.
And it was very good for me because I took that approach of going outside and exploring the fringes of my city, go to the countryside. I live in a medium-sized city in Brazil, which we still have city part and the farm, the nature around. And at that time, I had this with your writings. I had this approach. I'll go outside. I'll look for different things to see. I'll explore the city and enjoy the fact that pretty much it's empty now. Everyone's in their houses, and I don't want to be cold about that because I know many people lost their family and friends. But for me, it was a very good moment of life because I had this exploration, I had this searching around, and you talk a lot about this in Gang Fit and all of your things you wrote. Uh, can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I want this conversation to be something inspirational for other people, for my friends, for people that will listen to us. How they can be, how can they can approach this explorer attitude towards life and be more productive, more creative.
Well, it's difficult to say specifically. I mean, for me, focusing on lockdown for a moment,
Hmm.
lockdown was one of those occasions that will probably never happen again in life. Because what happened in London is it was basically switched off.
Hmm.
Okay, London was like switched off for a few months. And it happened to be that was March, I think we had a lockdown in March 2020. And it happened to be a glorious spring. It was really nice spring. Okay, it was really warm and sunny. It was really, I remember it. And lockdown was a funny thing. Now, here's an important thing. Lockdown for some people was great and it was freedom and it changed their lives, whereas lockdown for other people was terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a sense, what happens in the world isn't neutral. I'm not someone who's going to say whatever happens to you is neutral. It isn't, because if your family dies or your parents die, this isn't neutral. You can't say, well, say, oh, it's not a bad thing. Yes, it's a bad thing. It's not a nice thing, and everything. So I'm not saying, but what I'm saying is what happens in life affects different people in completely different ways. So lockdown for me, I mean, my life's good anyway, but lockdown for me was great because suddenly what happened in London, there was less traffic, 90% less traffic. The air was less polluted. I could suddenly hear more birdsong.
Hmm.
The nights were clearer. Okay, the night sky was clearer. Strangely enough, people were friendlier. The people who are out were friendlier. It was a very weird thing. And as you say, it was a bit like 28 Days Later, where you're walking through the city, I think, or one of the films, Zombie Foot, where he wakes up in a hospital and he goes out and there's no one around. That was like what it was. And I was traveling on the trains a lot. You weren't meant to travel on the trains. And then I
Hmm.
traveled on the trains and there was like hardly anybody on the trains. And I was
Hmm.
going down to the coast, from London down to the coast, and you weren't really meant to travel out. You were only meant to travel if you were a key worker and you were traveling to work. But I thought, no, to hell with that. I'm going to just go on the train and explore.
Hmm.
And so I went to the coast. And the funny thing about going to the coast was there were a lot of shops and places that weren't meant to be open, which were open. So I discovered this like hidden world of people who were just like ignoring all the lockdown rules. And it was really strange. And a friend of mine was trapped in a small place in Scotland, and she found it very claustrophobic because to go from Scotland to into England, you basically have to go down. There's one or two roads, and they were like blocked by the police and everything. And the people were very, like curtain twitchers, or like reporting people if you were doing stuff. But so it was quite difficult for her because she felt very trapped. But in London, I didn't feel trapped at all. So I was like going everywhere. And what I realized is that they were talking. The government was talking about rules and regulations and people being fined. And this goes back to what you were saying about what was it about discovering things, discovering different parts of the world. Is that I
Yeah.
found when I went on the train, I was literally walking past people, the police, security people, and they didn't say anything. Nobody said anything. And I thought, oh, what they're doing is people are acting a certain way, staying at home and everything, not because through fear, as opposed to the reality, where I was traveling all over the place. and I wasn't scared of any outcome and I was literally walking past people who were meant to enforce the rules who weren't doing anything.
Mhm.
So that's what I discovered. So it goes back to what you were saying. Once you discover the world, a different world, you discover it's not, it's really quite different than what people say it is. And I think that's the overall thing. Lockdown was a great example of that because I was doing what I like. And listen, it wasn't just me. I know people. I had friends who were literally doing what they like as well.
Mhm.
You know, and it was seemed to be really weird where like I understand why people follow the rules. Okay, we can have a big debate about COVID, lockdown, and all the rest of it, but
Yeah.
people followed the rules because they were basically told to follow the rules. And then the next day, when lockdown was stopped, people went back to their normal lives as if a virus would suddenly stop one day to the next. So basically, people were just following rules. You know,
Yeah.
majority of people. I'm not saying everyone was just following rules because some people literally were staying in because they didn't want to infect people or they didn't go to their elderly parents' house because they didn't want to give them, which I understand. I wasn't doing that, but I was meeting up with friends and that we were training, we were doing stuff. We had a party, we weren't meant to be having it. We had a party in my friend's shed at the end of the garden during lockdown. Loads of people came. One had COVID. We were all dancing, breathing in the same air. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So what I'm saying is, I wrote something about, or a couple of things. One is discover the world without, what's it? Discover different worlds without a spaceship.
Yes.
I think you mentioned at one point, and which is what I'm saying is, there's not just the interplanetary world of Mars and Mercury and Pluto and Venus and all the rest of it. There's worlds within worlds in our own planet. And we've all been brought up in a certain world. My world was like you go to work, you leave school, you go to work, it's 9 to 5 and everything, and then you come home and at the weekend you do the shopping and whatever else it is. You go to the pub on a Friday, the Great British Institution, pub on a Friday, pub on a Saturday, pub on Sunday lunchtime. I did all that sort of thing. And then once you step out of that, you realize there's loads of people not living that life at all. So it's like, David Deutsch talks about the multiverse. He's a well-known
Mhm.
quantum physicist. He wrote Fabric of Reality and the Beginning of Infinity. He wrote about the multiverse. The multiverse is here. You're in it. It's
Yeah.
like all the different lives you can have. So I think that if you had 1,000 different lives, you could live 1,000 different ways. Perhaps in a life I wouldn't be a fit person. I'd just be like, I don't know, 30 stone and just live my life in a pub. Perhaps the next one I'll be a physicist. Perhaps the next one I'll be a mathematician. Perhaps the next one I'll be a fossil hunter or something or whatever.
Mhm.
So my idea about exploring the world, nothing I say is new, it's not new. But I really believe that there's a lot of us that we don't really know. Okay, because we haven't explored all those different things, and you don't know how you're going to react to different situations because you've never been in those situations. And you don't know until you've experienced these things. There are certain sides of you that maybe you'll never uncover. You'll never uncover. It was an interesting thing. A friend said to mine, it was quite funny. A friend said to me a few years ago, he's a painter and decorator. Yeah. So he goes to houses and he paints and decorates them and everything. And he said, Mark, he said, do you know what? My granddad was a proper painter and he's got a painting in the portrait gallery in Trafalgar Square in London.
Hmm.
I said, what? He said, yeah, my granddad, I didn't know, I've only just found out. He was like a proper portrait painter and he's got in one of our finest galleries in the UK. And he said, well, it obviously came out of me because I'm a painter and decorator.
Mhm.
Okay. It's like, so that was quite funny. But the
Yeah.
point is, perhaps he did have some artistic bent, artistic skill, which was never really properly realized.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? So I think the problem is with a lot of kids, and we have a problem with in London, unfortunately, with kids going off the rails and they're feral and they're like in the street culture. And the thing is, they're ignorant. They haven't really been shown that there's many different worlds they can find out about and
Mhm.
inhabit and discover. And I think that's all of us. And I think you can go through all through life and not really know, well, 99% of things.
Yeah.
It's not possible to know everything, but I mean, when I wrote, I think it was in Gang Fit one about Discover the World was basically, sleep at school because it's aimed at
Mhm.
kids, sleep at school,
Mhm.
go out at night. But
Yeah.
I actually did that when I was young. No, not
Uh-huh.
sleep at school, But when I left school, I usually just wander around London like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Just,
Mhm.
you know, the red light areas, district, you know, parts of London. And you start seeing all different sights and sounds and different things and everything than you see during the day. And it's amazing to discover all those different things, you know, and everything,
Yeah.
and see this like world that you never really see because you're in the mainstream. But as soon as you step out of the mainstream, then a different life opens up. So that's what I mentioned about also about once you leave employment,
Mm.
you get into this place which I did a PDF on it, which I call the liminal zone. It's literally, it's like some sort of weird world which is neither there or neither, it's neither here, neither there. You're sort of wandering around, you know, in this sort of weird twilight
Mhm.
zone of not being employed, not being unemployed, not being, you don't know what you are. So if someone says, "What do?" You don't
Mhm.
really know what you do. You know, what's your job? Well, you don't have a job. But it's not that you're unemployed, it's that you're sort of unemployable. You know, you don't want to work. And so you're not really sure. And so I spent quite a long time not really knowing what it is I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I discovered, you know, I just wanted to like write. Basically, I just wanted to rant. So I started writing and
Mhm.
stuff. And but I was in this weird world where if someone said, "Well, what do you do?" It's like, "Oh, I don't know what I do. Why are you asking me?" You know, it's now I can just say I'm a writer, you know, something. I don't believe I am a writer, but I can say I'm a writer or I do this or whatever. Or
Mhm.
I earn money from Gumroad, you know, from
Mhm.
X
To make
or
it
something.
easier to
Yeah, just
explain.
to make it easier, because you don't want to explain. If someone says what you do, they don't want to really hear half our answer, do they? It's
Uh-huh.
like if you say to someone, "How are you?" You don't want to hear the bastard say, "Oh, I've been to hospital, my leg is blah blah, and you know, my gallbladder is whatever." You don't want to hear any of that. You just want a person to say, "Yeah, I'm fine, thanks."
Yeah.
So it's
That's
like
true.
if someone says, "What do you
Mhm.
do?" If you start saying, "Well, I do that, blah blah," and yeah, but then again, you say, "Come on, man, just say you're this, you're right." So it
Yeah.
became very. Once I started making money in my own way, it was easier to interact with people who were employed.
Mhm.
No, but as I say, once I got out of employment and things like going to the gym, you know, you go to the gym in the mid morning. When you go to the gym mid morning during the week, you meet different people than at the weekend or in
Mhm.
the evening, because the people who are there at the weekend and the evening are essentially employed people who can't go during the day.
Mhm.
So straight away, you meet different people. So after a while, once you've shed yourself of the employed psychology, you can't help but meet different people, unemployed people, students, the retired, self-employed, business, bouncers, doormen. They're all at the gym at random hours. So you naturally start meeting different people you wouldn't meet if you were employed 9 to 5. Who are you going to meet during the day? Employed 9 to 5. You're going to meet commuters on the way to work who are employed. You're going to speak to, all you're going to be around is employed people. And then when you come home, you commute. And at the weekend, all the employed people are shopping,
Mhm.
shopping for clothes, shopping the supermarket, getting all the food and everything. So you're meeting employed people. But as soon as you're out of that, you just start meeting different people. So you get different influences. So going right back to what you said, is essentially, it's about discovering the multiverse, which is around you, which you don't normally see.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, the parallel worlds and everything, which are basically just there. I'm not
Mhm.
a religious person, but I said God said that he hides things by putting them next to you. You
Mhm.
know, it's literally there. It's literally right there. But if you're
Yeah.
brought up by parents who are employed, you go to school, the school tells you, you know, you need to get exams. Why? Because you need to get a job. And then you go and get a job. And then the people you meet have got a job. And then your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your future wife or husband is then an employed person, and then you have kids, and then they go to nursery, they go to school, and then they get a job. The problem about being employed isn't that is that it is successful for a lot of people. If it
Mhm.
wasn't successful for anybody,
Yeah.
then everyone would see, well, what's the point? But you can be successful and be employed. You can have a nice life. It can be comfortable. You can get your house and your 2.4 children. Well, I think it's like 1.6 children now because fertility rate, you know, has gone right down. But you
Yeah.
know, and your herbaceous board, you know, nice garden, you can do well being employed. But if nobody did well being employed, then everyone would see it. It's like that would be obvious. It's not good. But there are millions and millions of people, I believe, like me. And this is what I actually found writing Gang Fit. I started getting people messaging me, and it wasn't just the disaffected youth, the student, the person who didn't like work. It was literally business people, millionaires, billionaire. Even a billionaire hedge fund manager invited me over to New York because he said, I like the way you think. So I discovered that at all echelons, all levels of society, there were people who thought just like me. It was quite a revelation. I thought I was like juvenile and ranting against being employed, ranting against being trapped. And I realized that this is a universal thing. It's not just people like me. It's people you wouldn't think, who like business owners, as I say, hedge fund, all sorts of people. Who said, yeah, I like what you think. And it's like, oh, okay. So I realized when I did the first part of Gang Fit, which was Gang Fit 1, which I wasn't just speaking to like young people who didn't really know what to do with their lives. I was speaking to a whole load of people. It's incredible how I realized that what I thought. This is why I think and this is why I say to people that you're not a freak. You just don't want to be. You just don't want to be trapped. Whatever that means to you, you just don't want to be trapped. Work, I felt like I was trapped. Okay, and I think that you may not be sure what you want in life, but you probably have some idea what makes your life worse. For me, being employed made my life worse. So that Sunday was like, I'm not a depressive person, but Sunday was horrible because I knew I had to go to work the next day. And then Saturday became horrible. Why? Because it was the day before Sunday. It's like, what? I'm already miserable on the Saturday. Why am I miserable on the Saturday? Because the Sunday's always shit. Oh, okay. You can bleep that out. So it's like, okay, and why Sunday shit? Because you've got to go to work the next day. So the best time for me was a Friday night, leaving work. And then you go to the pub, go
far
to a
away
club,
from
or whatever. Because it's as far away from the Monday morning as possible. And I thought, this is crazy because it's leaching into my Saturday now. It's like, so, and then when my daughter was born, I was like 25, I think when my daughter was born. I think there's they say, oh, you have to be sensible now when your daughters, when your kids are born, you have to be sensible, earn money, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. But for me, I thought it went the opposite way. I thought I have to be sensible now. Okay, I'm going to leave work. That was my comment. So I could spend more time with my daughter. I know it sounds like, oh, he needs to spend more time with his daughter. But it was literally like, am I going to like grow? If my daughter, am I going to see her grow up? Am I going to see, do things with her? Or I'm just going to be another bloke who doesn't see their kids, because they're working all the time. And then they don't really even know their kids very well because they don't interact with them. So when they cry, they don't know how to stop them crying. When they're like this, they don't know how to do it. So for me, it was like, so me and, my daughter's mum, we were just like, basically, we just went places. We just did stuff. Went for long cycles, went to the coast, went into the woods, just did stuff. It was great. It was great. That was the best decision I ever made, was to leave work when my daughter was young. And it's a complete opposite of the advice. Make sure you earn enough money, make sure it was like, no. And when I left, I didn't really have savings. I didn't really have whatever. I just used the death ground strategy. It was like, right, okay, nothing's happening now. I'm employed. I'm not doing anything outside that other than the usual socializing. So I'm just going to leave. And I'll tell you what, when you're facing the death ground strategy, is essentially when you're facing complete ruin, that really generates a lot of psychological energy to do stuff. And you find out about yourself because you do stuff you never thought you would do. Some good and some bad, just to survive. So and then you become interested in things that you never thought you were interested in because they've been suppressed by being at work all the time. I know there's an account on X who I follow, and he was earning $500,000 a year with Amazon, AWS. And he discovered after he left, he's done well earning money on X. He likes woodwork. So he started building lots of, furniture and chopping boards. He's doing his kids' bedroom at the moment. He's doing it himself. And he only discovered he liked doing it because he left work, because work was suppressing all the other aspects of him. So I've just like gone on for a while. So I've like completely lost the thread of.
No, talk a little bit more about this death ground strategy. You put that in practice, and what do you
Yeah,
felt
I
at
did.
that
I didn't
time?
really know
You
it was
felt you
called the
were
death
gonna
ground.
die at some point?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing about the death ground strategy, it gets rid of all the bad things in your life because for me, the bad thing was like working, being
Mhm.
trapped. But it gets rid of the good things in life as well because you've got no money. Okay. But it's essentially like, I think they said when, was it Cortez or you land on the beach? Basically, it's do or die, sink or swim. You know,
Mhm.
you sink or it's not for everybody. I mean, it's best to use a sensible strategy. And these days, a sensible strategy you can do better because we've got the internet, which is essentially you keep working and you start a side hustle. You know, I
Mhm.
don't like to use the word hustle because it's like you're fleecing people or you're like, well, but you start something on the side. Okay, you start earning a little bit of money, which is much easier now than it ever was when I was young because of the internet, which is the opportunity generated. The internet is so much opportunity now. So for me, when I left, there wasn't really the internet or social media as we know it now. And so I thought, Mark, what are you going to do? Are you going to wait until you start something, you know, and it makes 70% of the income you're getting from your job? And I thought, no, I'm not, because one, I don't know what to start.
Mhm.
Two, that might never happen. I might never earn enough money. So it doesn't
Mhm.
work for everyone, but it worked for me. Okay. But what does happen is if you use a death ground strategy, your life can implode. So the good thing, the bad things you get rid of because you're no longer having to get up and go. But also the good things like going on the holiday, having money to eat so that you don't starve to death, that also can implode as well. So it's not for everybody.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, once you get into that lifestyle, you it's amazing how much things that used to scare you no longer scare you. I think in the book with Robert Greene and 50 Cent, okay, called The 50th Law, he wrote the
Mhm.
48 Laws of Power. And then I think the second book was The 50th Law. And it was
Mhm.
Robert Greene and 50 Cent. And 50 Cent said basically, when he first saw a gun, or a gun was first pulled on him, he was like really scared, obviously, as you would be. He
Mhm.
said by the time a gun had been pulled at him 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, he said it was nothing. And that's
Yeah.
essentially what happens, that when you're employed, it seems like you're getting more secure and you're stronger, but in a way you're getting weaker because you've got your weekly, you've got your monthly wage and that comes in, you're employed. But once that you become redundant, once it's pulled away from you, what have you got? You've got no inner resources really to be
Mhm.
able to cope with the ups and downs. So I very quickly got used to the idea of sometimes I had money, sometimes I didn't. And you know what? None of us did starve. My daughter was fine. You
Yeah.
know, my missus was fine. We were all fine. And we did stuff. So I did like part-time gardening. I became like a market trader in Portobello Road in Notting Hill Gate, selling stuff at the weekends. I scrabbled together some money. We bought a little rental property, you know, which we let out and stuff. So I did like 101 things. I can't remember most of them
Mhm.
just to survive. Things I never would have done. So I actually found out about things and
Mhm.
became interested in things that being employed was suppressed. So the death ground strategy doesn't work for everything. It doesn't work for, but it works for people who are desperate. Because for me, it was an emergency situation.
Mhm.
That's how I felt it was. It was do or die. It was an emergency situation. I needed to leave work, otherwise I would die. People
Mhm.
would say that's dramatic, isn't it? It's like, no, it wasn't for me. This was making my life miserable. So I had to
Mhm.
do something. So I stopped doing it. People say, well, you haven't got the power to do it. Yes, you have. There's this idea about, you know, a tramp, you know, what's the saying? You know, beggars can't be choosers, which I've
Mhm.
always refused. Beggars can be choosers because you decide to choose. So I'm the beggar, you know, I have no money, I'm at work. But if I leave work, I have no money. If I'd had the idea beggars can't be choosers, I would never have worked. I'd never have left. If I'd been scared of having no money, I never would have left. And I thought, no, I need to save my life. And when you save your, you know, a wolf, when it's trapped in a snare or trap, it will literally gnaw its leg off to get out.
Yeah.
That's how much it wants freedom. That was the same for me.
Mhm.
I literally needed to do something to escape. So for me, it was a death ground strategy. I don't recommend it, but if you're desperate to leave work and you can't think of what to do, maybe you should just jump in the deep, you know, sink or swim. Maybe just leave. And that generates a lot of energy, psychological energy, because you're going to be made homeless in a few weeks if you don't think of what to do.
Hmm.
It's amazing how much energy that produces.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it always will work, because maybe you will become homeless.
Yeah, it's
You won't be
possible.
able to pay the rent or the mortgage. So I'm not saying it works. I'm not giving people advice to say this is what you should do. I'm just saying I did that. It worked for me. Some things imploded. But straight away I felt better, because on a Monday morning I could now turn right and decide, instead of left, to go to the train station. I now had some say in the life that I wanted to live, which is not
Hmm.
being trapped at work. So it was a great improvement. But early on, there were also feelings of dread, because where's the money coming from? But it all sorted itself out.
That's
So I'll
interesting.
never regret that, because,
Yeah.
and you do get stronger. Like I said about the 50 cent, after a while, financial pressure and all this, you may not want it, but after a while, it's like, meh, whatever.
Yeah.
The way they mostly help you is you understand there are millions of people surviving outside work.
Hmm.
And that's the main thing. It's confirmation that you can live a different life. That's the main thing. You meet all different people. And I've had like lots of conversations with different people. So I can't remember any particular anecdote or any particular thing which I thought, oh yeah, that's like, you know, what the main thing is that you realize that there are an awful lot of people that aren't mainstream, that aren't just going to work and coming home. As I said, some of them are retired. So they may, you
Hmm.
meet retired people as well. So,
Yeah.
and some of them are young, some of them are families with kids and everything, and others are, maybe unemployed, and others are people who've got non-standard hours, who are shift workers,
Mhm.
or people who are like or artists or writers or whoever they are. So all it does is confirm or reaffirm that there are people living a different life to the life you've decided you don't want as well.
Mhm.
So they're not the same as you necessarily. They don't have the same outlook or whatever as you, but you just know that there are millions of people who are not employed in the traditional sense. It's like when you're young and you go to a pub, you leave school, you start going out, nightclub, pub, blah, blah, blah. You think every young person is doing that. Yeah, 18, 19, 20. You think that's what you do when you're young, don't you? You go to the pub, you have a few drinks, you go to a club, you blah, blah. And it's really amazing. And you think everybody young's doing that, but they're not all doing that.
Mhm.
You only think they're doing that because you're doing that and your friends are doing that. And so when you're at work and you're commuting, everybody's at work and they're commuting. But the main thing you learn when you leave work and you meet all these different people is there's a life completely not like that. So that's the main thing apart from
Mhm.
individual things that you might be impressed with people you speak to, or things they say, or lives they've led and things like that. The main thing is you see there's a different way of living, which isn't being employed. I don't even think that's like, most people must know that. But it's when you
Mhm.
experience it, you really understand that, first of all, when you're not working, you think sort of self-conscious, like, oh, a young man ought to be at work. You ought to be doing stuff. And then after a while, you think, crumbs, there are loads of people not at work. Who are all
Yeah.
these people knocking about at 10:30 or 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, on the beach, in the shops, at the gym? Who are all those people? But they're obviously not doing not standard hours. But the thing is, you can't categorize all of them. They say it's this type of person or that. They're just different people,
Mhm.
but they're not at work in a standard way. And that's what you realize after a while. So the sort of, even though you leave employment, so one day you're employed, the next day you're not, the veil of employment, the thing that surrounds you, doesn't leave you for a while. It still surrounds you, because psychologically you're sort of employed still. You've left employment, but it's still the thing. It's still there next to you.
Something in
So
your
it
mind.
takes a while to completely shed your psychology
Mhm.
of employment. And the more you meet people who aren't employed in the traditional sense or are doing their own things, the more you start thinking employment just becomes less and less and less and less, until eventually it's not part of your world at all. It's like some shadow behind you in the cave. It's like the Chinese theater. It's not the Chinese, it's the Japanese, shadow puppet things, where
Mhm.
it's just like these shadows of like marionettes. It becomes meaningless. Employment becomes meaningless. jobs become meaningless. And that takes a while to go from leaving work until it gets to the point where it just seems like ridiculous. It just seems like a charade. Going to work just seems like a charade. It doesn't seem like the real life. But when you're employed, it's real. Everybody's doing it. But after a while, when you're not like that, it becomes just like a circus. It's like a freak show of people just going to work and coming home and going to work and coming home. That's just ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous, but surely we're not born to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be born to do that. We are born to achieve and succeed and, create and to do things. How can
Mm-hmm.
we be born to like go to the same place every day for 8 hours?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. But the amazing thing with the internet now, and I think in your email when you first approached me, was about the modern hunter-gatherer.
Yes.
Now we've got, it's essentially, I don't like using the term because it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like a digital nomad. It's like
Mm-hmm.
now you can make money wherever you are and whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an artist, it's easier to make money. If you're a musician, it's easier to make money. We used to think the internet was going to be terrible because everything's free. But
Mm-hmm.
no, it's like an explosion of opportunity. That
Yeah.
if you're a furniture maker, you're an artist, you're a writer, you're a creator, you're self-employed in some way, you could be a YouTuber, you do whatever it is. Now with the apps and the software, you can basically create the sort of life that you want. You never need to be employed.
Mm-hmm.
You can be employed if you want to. The point is you've got a choice. Well, I haven't really got a choice because I've got to pay. Yes, you have. You just have to
Mm-hmm.
realize you've got a choice. Oh, yeah, but I've got pressures which you don't have. I've got kids, they've got school. No, you have a choice. You've always got a choice. If you think you haven't got a choice, then you haven't. But there's nothing real about it. That's another thing I was to say. Oh, well, you need to be in the real world. What are you talking about? The real world? Once you leave employment, you see there's loads of people in a different world. Is employment the real world? No, it isn't. It's just someone's world. But over time, employment just becomes ridiculous to you. You're in a coffee shop. You get there at 10:30, and in between 12 and then at 12, everyone comes in from the 12 o'clock lunch shift, and they start buying their coffee and their lunch and everything. And then 1:45, they're all gone. And then the next cohort of employees come in at 1. They do the same thing, and by 2, they're all gone. And so for 2 hours, it's like suddenly got all these people come in, and then they're gone, and you're still in the coffee shop doing whatever you're doing, and they're all gone. It's just like a circus. You look at it, it's some sort of freak show. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're freaks, but I'm just saying some of them may enjoy it. Some of them may be depressed. Some of them may be happy. Some of them may be comfortable. But what I'm saying is nowadays with the internet, it is easier than ever to escape being employed if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, you've got a choice. It doesn't suit everyone, but you now have a choice. And when people say, well, blah, blah, blah. No, you have a choice. That's all.
Yes. One another thing you mentioned in your books is the what you call the human marshmallow, and you said that society are creating soft people for many reasons. We have air conditioning everywhere we go, so many things that make us comfortable, but it can be dangerous to us, right? And in opposition to that, we have the hunter-gatherer, the guy who must work to earn his food, to get what he needs to be alive. So, what can we do to avoid to be human marshmallows nowadays and be more hunter-gathered?
Well, I think it starts off with this, first of all, and I said it in Human Marshmallow. It's basically no creature in the history of the world has had a default setting of physical comfort. Okay. We have to exercise to get food, or we used to have to exercise. I mean, thank God we don't need to do that. Thank God we're actually not hunter-gatherers and we have to like kill a bison. I have to go out and like with my catapult and kill a few squirrels and have like roast squirrel for, I don't have to do that. So thank God we have supermarkets and we've got agriculture. We had the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. Thank God we got that. But, you know, before all of that, and when you look at other creatures now, unless they're babies, and they're drinking milk from their mothers and mammals and stuff like that, or being looked after by their parents. The idea that you can go through life just physically comfortable, this never happened in the history of the world. It's never happened in the history of the world. And so if you're always physically comfortable, you're going to turn into the human marshmallow. Basically, you're going to be fat, overweight, it might be diabetic, hypertensive, blah, 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 whatever, because all you're doing is consuming and all you're doing is going towards comfort. The thing about comfort is it's very appealing because it feels so nice. It feels
Yeah.
nice to be comfortable. If it felt terrible, then whatever, but it feels really nice. But so now we've got to re-inject some sort of non-comfortable stuff. You've got to inject exercise, okay? Because if we don't, our body degrades. The body needs exercise to improve. It's what Taleb says about anti-fragility. And a thing which is anti-fragile needs stress to improve. The body needs stress to improve. If it's not stressed physically, maybe your brain as well. If your brain isn't stressed, your psychology isn't stressed, you don't improve. So we now need to, we got to the stage. I said something like, in the old Star Trek in the 70s, they had this like machine that you press it and the food appears. I forget the
Mhm.
name of the thing. Press a button and there's a like, I don't know, ice cream or something, or, a nice sirloin steak or something, which appears. My God, can you imagine? We've already got to the stage where you can just look on your app, look on your app, whatever, and your food is delivered.
Yeah.
So this is like the last second of human history where you no longer need to exercise to eat. You don't need to exercise to eat. And that is turning millions and millions of people into marshmallows, into human marshmallows. So now we've got to re-inject. So comfort is great. You don't want a life of physical discomfort all the time. But now we've got to the idea that now we've got to the stage where you literally don't need to do any physical work to survive. So
Yeah.
we've gone the other way now. I think there was this story a few years ago about a student who lived without going outside their room for like 1 year.
Hmm.
They just basically ordered everything over the phone from their credit card. All the food was ordered in and everything. And they proved that you didn't need to do anything to survive. You could literally survive just with a credit card and a phone connection.
What experiment?
Well, that's a typical student experiment, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
It's a
many do
sort of
that.
thing a student would do. It's just like live in your room and just order all the food. Now it's become even easier because with an
Yeah.
app, got a choice and it gets delivered by, you know, a guy from the different part of the planet who comes and delivers your food for you. You don't need. So
Yeah.
humans are so creative and so incredible that we've managed to forge a system where we can have food delivered to us from all around the world, food delivered to us with no effort whatsoever.
Yeah.
No physical, you don't even need to get on a bus to go to the supermarket anymore, or train or walk. You can literally get it delivered to you. This is both amazing that humans are so great at being able to manipulate the world to make it easy for us. But it's also terrifying in the fact that you no longer need to exercise to do anything.
Yeah.
And this is when you become a human marshmallow,
Hmm.
essentially. So I don't know if that's really answered your question or your point at all,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's like, you need to, as I said, for freedom, for personal sovereignty, you need to remain
Yeah.
active. And yeah. So this is the first time in human history, sort of, where you no longer need to exercise to get food. And every creature, as far as I know, most of them, I know some wait in little traps, and when food comes, they like quickly go out. That's
Mhm.
minimal exercise. But essentially, it's the first time in human history that I think that we don't need to exercise to get food.
Mhm.
And this is great because humans are incredible. What we've done to the world and how we've adapted the environment to suit us is just amazing. We're the
Yeah.
only creatures that can really do that in scale, that we can adapt the environment to make it more habitable for us because nature's hostile to humans. It's not nice for humans. So we've adapted
Yeah.
nature to suit us, which is just incredible that we've got the knowledge to be able to do that. The downside is that we're going to lose the ability to walk, because you no longer need
Pretty
your
much.
limbs to survive. It just gets delivered. So you look like
Yeah.
this huge blob creature, just eating food,
Yeah.
or this student getting pizzas delivered,
Yes.
things like that. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
idea that the human marshmallow is that comfort and conserved energy has its place,
Mhm.
but the modern life, if you just go with it, is going to turn you into the human marshmallow because you've got labor saving devices. You got moving staircases, escalators, got lifts and all the rest of it. So it's not just food delivery. It's like everything is making it physically easier for you. And so I think, well, if that's the case, and
Yeah.
the problem is it surrounds you, like a snake. It
Hmm.
feels good, it feels comfortable,
Hmm.
but eventually you lose the ability to do anything because you no longer need to do anything physical. So we now need to re-inject that wildness. We need to re-inject that physical side,
Hmm.
because we're not forced to do it. The environment used to force us to do it, but it doesn't anymore. So we now need to we've got to reintroduce it into our lives. As I said, you've escaped hardship and you found comfort. And now what you need to do is escape comfort and reintroduce a bit of physical hardship. But escaping comfort is more difficult in a way than psychologically than escaping hardship, because hardship. You don't
Yeah.
want hardship, so you want to escape it. But comfort feels so good, you don't
Hmm.
want to escape it. So
Yeah.
it's quite difficult. It's really difficult because it envelops you or envelops you. It feels nice, but eventually you have to think,
Yeah.
because I think the human condition is not to do exercise for no reason. We
Hmm.
only exercise to get food and things like that. We don't exercise for no reason, if you see what I mean.
Hmm.
There's a trade-off between how much energy you expend and how many calories you expect to get back. Okay, now that trade-off is gone because you no longer need to think, oh, okay, do I need to, should I expend 500? It's not how hunter-gatherers work, but it's like, are we going to go on a 20-mile trek for something or not? Because if we go on a 20-mile trek, are we going to get 10,000 calories from that or not? So the body is like weighing up, so how much it needs to expend for the calories. Now we don't need to do that. We don't need to expend anything. We've got limited calories. So why should we exercise? There's no reason to exercise. So
Yeah.
now you've got to force yourself to exercise to
Some
make up for the fact
mental
that the
effort.
environment is no longer doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And this game goes back to a job as well. If you're in a sedentary job, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you're not exercising, are you?
Hmm.
Again, it's unnatural. Just being sitting on your backside for 8 hours. I mean, that isn't the only sort of job, but most of the jobs I had were, when I was employed, were office jobs. So you're literally sitting down all day.
Yeah.
That's not natural. It's not natural. I'm not saying naturalism in itself is great, because there are some natural things that will kill you, so
Yeah.
but so it's like basically taking the good things from modern knowledge and life and all the rest of it, and refusing the things that are negative. That's all. It's not about refusing a whole of modernity and living in the middle of nowhere, and because that's a hard life, isn't it? Now you
Yeah.
can be the modern hunter-gatherer, which is wherever you go, take the internet with you, do whatever, and you can make a living wherever you are. And it's all digital, so it just goes into your account, and then so it's a really strange thing that the internet has basically allowed us to become modern day hunter-gatherers,
Hmm.
where you can move forward through the environment, the terrain with your family, and you're not constrained. And so, like you were talking about during lockdown, you can basically just metaphorically and actually go through the environment and discover the world and
Yeah.
take your tribe with you. That's what you can do now.
Hmm.
Whereas, could you do that when in the industrial age? No, because you were stuck
Well, not.
in a work, so you were stuck. You couldn't do that. But
Yeah.
now we can do that, and it's just an incredible thing.
Yeah.
It's an incredible thing. I remember when the internet first came out, I thought, oh, this means that I can literally be on an island somewhere. This was my idea. It's like, what? You can be on an island, have an internet connection, and live forever. Okay, so there needs to be a shop or something. You need to be able to access food, but it's essentially, but you can basically be anywhere in the world and earn money,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
just enough to live how you want to live. It doesn't have to be £1 million, whatever. And now, of course, with Elon Musk Starlink, it's making it even more achievable, because
Yeah.
Starlink means you can be in the middle of nowhere. I mean, eventually, as I said in one of the game fits, is like everything is going to be, there are parts of the world where you don't want the intrusion of modernity. Perhaps you could argue, I don't want that. Okay,
Mhm.
well, switch off your phone, or don't have Wi-Fi. Fair enough. But ultimately, what's going to happen is the whole of the world's going to be connected to the internet, and then the moon will be connected to the internet, and then Mars, and then the whole solar system. is going to be Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
And it's going to be in every cell of every flower, every tree, there's going to be Wi-Fi. It's all going to be connected. And so everything will be connected to the grid. But what it is that you live off grid, in the grid. And then you
Yeah,
can be the modern hunter-gatherer and take what you like and just ignore everything else. So for me, the great thing that I ignore, it's different now because I'm older. So it's like, that's all gone anyway. But the great thing I could ignore in my 30s and 40s and 50s was work.
mhm,
So
yeah,
immediately, even though there were still problems at times with money and all the rest of it, and I still had to think about what am I going to do, that huge burden I had, which had been trapped at work, was instantly taken away. I'll never regret that decision because that literally transformed my life and it made my life go off in a different direction.
that's great. And one thing you mentioned is to bring your tribe with you. I want you to talk a little bit about family, friends. In GangFit, you mentioned you must create a band of brothers and you must bring them with you because they influence you most more than you can think. So also in the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that uh, fitness for you is like normal because you had friends that are fit. They they have the same age of you and they're fit. Can you talk a little bit more about friends and family and how other people that are really close to you, how they influence you?
I don't think it's not new that it's not revolutionary that you're influenced by the people you're surrounded by. And a lot of young people don't really understand that who you mix with is really, really important. You learn from them and they learn from you, even if it's just like by osmosis. So fortunately, I have a lot of people in my family who are basically like me.
Hmm.
It's non-traditional work. We don't have the idea of just being a wage slave or I'm not denigrating people who work. If they choose to work, that's fine. But the idea that you just be employed all your life is not a thing in my family. And when new people come in, like new partners, new wives, new boyfriends, they soon get subsumed into our way of thinking because they see that we're all completely non-standard. And they see, oh, I work all the time, but look at this bunch. They're not working, they're doing their own things, they're setting up things, they're doing this. One's a writer, one's an artist, one's doing events, one's doing this, one's doing that. It's like, how are they living? And then eventually they just turn into people into what we do. And so people we meet, when they come into our family, they just become they're influenced by us and they just become, oh, I don't want to work now. Even if they were like real employees and they like their work and they thought they were conquering the world and whatever, they come into our like family group and then they think, oh, okay, they've never experienced the fact of people outside their cohort of people. And they see a whole family, or our extended family living how we live. And it's like, oh, okay. So who you mix with is really important. Okay. And as you said, all the people I mixed with as far as through athletics, exercising and all the rest of it was just completely normal. It's completely normal. And yet for a lot of people, it's sort of abnormal. So I'm viewed as, sometimes as I feel abnormal sometimes for 60 something because not because I am, because if I compare myself, it's not about being, oh, I'm so much better than them. I'm just different to whatever. People say, oh, when you get to a certain age, you're achy, you're this, you're that. I'm saying, no. Oh, yeah, but you're whatever. I said, no, it's just different. So who you mix with is really important. And I think you need to mix with people who have ideas, who talk about interesting stuff and want to improve their lives, who want to go forwards, who talk about things, not just about TV or the Oscars or celebrities or I don't know, whatever. They think about things. People talk and think about certain things and topics and aspects of life or philosophy without being too like hoity-toity. It's like, just people who think about ideas and they also and they also talk about money as well, because money's important.
Yeah.
About concepts of making money, or they talk about tax, or they talk about this. And, and so I just think that people who already like you gravitate, who already think like that. A lot of them gravitate towards you, and you gravitate towards them as well. It's very difficult for me to, even though I've got a range of friends, and obviously some of them are employed, but their lives are so different. And the way they talk is so different. It's difficult to really bond with those people because employed people don't realize perhaps how much that even at the weekend they're employed because they're in the employed mindset. And they talk about employment at lunchtime. They talk about a pay rise. They talk about their boss. They talk about the office work, their office friend. They talk about, and then they have their weekend off, and then they have their this, and it's still, so employment isn't like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It's literally Monday to Sunday, 24 hours a day. So with the people I know, the people I've friends, it's literally not like that. It's not like that at all. And so I think the people you mix with is really important. But they also say that when you're ready to learn, the teacher appears. So I think once you open your world up to different influences, all these people like just come in, don't they? They just come in. And the thing is, it's not that they look like you. They could be black, white, yellow, brown, red, whatever. They could be old, young. They can be well off, poor. It's that they think like you.
Yeah.
It's that they think like you. So diversity isn't like all these, different multicultural. It's not that. It's just a difference in thought and difference of opinion and everything. But once you leave a certain world, you start meeting people. And I said this earlier, you start meeting people in a different world and you naturally sort of gravitate. And they're all different, but there's a similar thing. They're not employed. So for for kids and for teenagers, it's deadly if they get into the wrong environment, really, because it really sets them back.
Yeah. I
And
saw you mention that you'd prefer to have a bad house in a nice neighborhood than a
yeah,
nice house
yeah.
in a bad neighborhood.
You think about it more when you're older as well. When you're young, being in the shit environment isn't so bad because it's edgy, because there's things doing, there's like illegal house parties, there's like this and that, and it's all great and everything, and it's all edgy and everything. But after a while, that's no longer alluring. And I know lots of people who moved into like dodgy areas when they were young, and as they got older and had a family, they moved out.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, it's better shit house in a nice environment and a nice house in a shit environment. Because if you have a nice house in a crap environment, as soon as you open the door, you've got trouble. It's horrible. So you want to open the door and look at beauty. You want to open the door and be in a nice environment. And you can improve your house, but you can't improve your area.
Hmm.
Over time, your area can be improved. But if you have a nice house in a war zone, this isn't being snobbish, but I think once you get older, you want to be in nice surroundings. And when you've got young children, you want them to be in nice surroundings so that when you open your door, there's not rubbish. There's not problem people. It's not problem. I'm not saying there are bad people and good people, but you live in environments where the situation's a bit worse. There's more crime. There's more problems. There's more pollution. There's more people with psychological issues and things. So I think, especially as you get older, you want to be surrounded by nice things. So when you open the front door, it's a nice vista. You're looking out at something nice. And I know people in London who they moved to edgy areas when they were younger. Edgy areas and that are, they've got pubs, clubs, nice and everything. But when they had children, they grew up old and they had children, they decided to move out because it wasn't the right environment for their kids. So I can't understand people who will get more for their money by moving to a worse area, but they have a nicer house. My point is that no, I'd rather have a shed in somewhere really, really nice. And the overall thing that, you can improve your house, but you can't improve your area. Okay, areas can change over time, but why would you spend 10 years in a really bad area and you have kids growing up and probably the schools are worse? If you're sending your kid to a state school and not a private school, the schools are going to be worse. The teaching is going to be worse. They might get involved with kids who have got more problems. It's not about being snobbish. It's just about why make things difficult for yourself? So obviously it's nice to have a nice house in a nice area.
Mhm.
In England or in London, that costs money, costs a lot of money. So I think you want the worst house in the best possible area, the one that you can afford. in the best possible area. It's different if you're in the country, you're in a village or whatever. It's, you know, on Scotland. I spend a lot of time in Scotland, you know, it's a cheaper area. So, and, but if you're in the city, there's, you know, there's problem areas of the city. So what's the point of moving into those areas? So as I've got, this is how Gang Fit starts off. Gang Fit 1 starts off about disaffected youth and smashing up the state, you know, the world around you and doing what you like and ignoring authority. And then gradually over time, it turns into something about appreciating nature and beauty, you know, and creating your life. And that's the arc of Gang Fit. It starts off as a rant about freedom and health and all the rest of it, and being slightly disaffected and, you know, not being like anyone else and ignoring rules and authority and stuff. And then it turns into more a thing about creating nice things in your life and going forwards in life and creating things. And I think Gang Fit 3 ends up with Balcony of Dead Flowers. Is about, you know, you've got to grow your garden, you know, grow your environment, make it nice, because the world's a great place. It's not a small place, it's a very big place, and there's all sorts of things to discover. And it's a shame when children are brought up in bad areas and their creativity and everything is like suppressed, and they mix with the wrong kids and they've got bad influences, you know. And unless you're an exceptional kid, it's very easy to get in with bad influences. So I think it's a parent's duty to try and create, you know, a nice environment for the kids. When I say nice environment, ones that aren't problems, you know, for the children, I think it's really important. And so, yeah, I'm a firm believer. If you've got a certain amount of money, try and live in the best place possible as you can. And I've said this to my niece, I've said it to my daughter, you know, straight away. I said, wherever you move to a nice area. You know, even if a place isn't as good. I said it to my nieces, you know, if you're going to live somewhere, move to as nice area as possible. It's just nicer. The people you meet are nicer. There's less chance of being mugged. There's less. I'm not like freaked out about London. I'm not someone who goes in London and thinks, oh, I'm going to get mugged. I'm not like that because I'm a Londoner. So I'm completely used to London, but I'm aware there are places which are better than other places. Not only are they better in the sense the people are just less aggro, there's less pavement rage, there's less road rage, there's less pollution, there's less rubbish, but there's just more beauty. It's nicer. The architecture's nicer. The parks are nicer. People's front gardens are nicer. You know, this is nice to be in a nicer. This is what you want to fill your kids' minds with, is beauty and niceness and creativity and fantasy and stories and talking fish and flying horses. That's what you need to inculcate in your kids, and creativity. And so that was, and then I said in Gang Fit 4, which is, you know, no money millionaire, about living the life you sort of want to live. And it, you know, a lot of that involves being in nice places. Discover all the crap places. Yeah, discover those, but don't be trapped in them. It's like the job, you know, I worked in a job and I felt trapped, so I left. But in London, in the city, in a lot of cities, there's some horrible areas. So why would you, just because you're going to get an extra bedroom, why would you move to a horrible area, especially if you've got kids? Because then there's an uphill struggle. You know, your kids are the wrong influence. So I don't know if there's that applies to other things. But yeah, it's a simple thing, you know, shit house, nice area is better than a nice house in a shit area.
Yeah. You mentioned the series of books of Gang Fit. Do you plan to write a 50th volume? Are
Oh
you
man.
writing this?
Yeah, I think it will get a bit tired. You know, if I were at Gang Fit 5, as I say, I've done a hard copy book, which is available on Amazon, which is Gang Fit 1, 2, and 3 together. And
Mhm.
that's just Gang Fit. And then Gang Fit 4, No Money Millionaire, is basically, which is essentially my life. Yeah, no money millionaire. Sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had money and I've had no money, but, and then that departs from Gang Fit 1. It's not really about the disaffection of youth, you know. And then someone said the other day, funny enough, for the first time, said, oh, well, you're going to do a Gang Fit 5 because that would be really good. Yeah, I look forward to it. I think I've now sort of got that out of my system, you know, because Gang Fit started as a rant years and years and years ago. It started as a rant basically in my phone. You know, I thought I want to write about something. I want to say something that is in me. I think they said the first non-fiction book an author does is about their life, and then they go off at a different angle. But when your first book is about your life, so I think Gang Fit was about my life, and then my ideas about what I thought about the world. So I think that I've managed to get a lot of that out in Gang Fits 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, and 4. So I don't think Gang Fit 5, I wouldn't want to repeat myself,
Mhm.
go over the same ground. So if I did write a Gang Fit 5, it wouldn't be called Gang Fit 5. It'd be called something else, and it'd be
Mhm.
about something different.
Yeah,
I know that's like
it's
contradictory,
interesting.
but you see what I mean? You
Yeah.
know, it's so yeah, Gang Fit is now gone. You know, it's difficult.
Mhm.
I've got an audio book of Gang Fit, which is the audio of the book, and it's a 7 hour audio book. And it's really interesting because an American guy said, "Oh, I'll do the narration for you." So it's got an American accent doing the audio for Gang Fit, which is sort of weird in itself. And we go 50-50 on the audio books that I sell. So it's 50% for him, commission, 50% for me. Fine.
Mhm.
And I was coming down in a long drive, it takes about 10 hours from Scotland a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it is. And the person I was with, she'd bought the audio of Gangfit. And so she put it on
Mm.
as we were driving down from like Scotland, from the Highlands down to Somerset, down to Southwest England. And I listened to it and I was like, it wasn't like I wrote it at all. It was really weird. And this guy was talking about these ideas and whatever. I thought, what? Did I write that? It's like really weird. It's like just really weird listening to it. First of all, it was like embarrassing, like listening to what I'd written. And then eventually it was like someone else had written a book. So it's really weird when you write a book that afterwards it becomes, you sort of forget that you've written it. Even though it's true,
Mhm.
it's sort of you've moved on, to the next thing. I think this is a thing. Sometimes when people they talk to an author or they talk to someone about a book they wrote years ago, they think they're still speaking to the same person.
Yeah.
That person, like you do in life, has moved on to different things. It doesn't mean they've they're not that person who wrote that, but they morph and they change, and that's now out of their system. So I couldn't write a Gang Fit 5, which was like Gang Fit 1 and 2, because that's out of my system and I've written about it. It would be forced. And
Mhm.
I don't want to write things just for the sake of it. I
Yeah.
can only write something which I believe, and I believed what I was writing. So Gang Fit 5, I think if I did something like that, it would be a construct. And I'd be thinking about what do I need to write
Mhm.
for to be congruent with Gang Fit. And I don't want to do that. I only want to write what I want to write at the moment and not because it needs to continue from Gang Fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can imagine. As we talked before, when you read something you wrote, maybe that's different many years later, and like when you hear your own voice in a recording, it's weird. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Yeah, it is weird because it becomes like a third person. It becomes like
Mhm.
it's you, but it's not really you.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing. But listening to the audio was very strange. Some of the things was quite funny. I said, did I write that? Because that's like quite funny. And other things were like, man, this just sounds like this guy's on a rant. And I thought, yeah, that was me writing it. It's just like a rant. And I
Yeah.
wrote it in a particular format, and it was just like a load of essays. I think
Mhm.
the thing is, when you don't need to go, well, the wonderful thing about publishing is self-publishing is there are no gatekeepers anymore. Okay, so there's no agent or publishers telling you how to write, what you can write. That does mean there's a lot of crap which is self-published, obviously. It's like spam. But it does mean that no one can tell you how to write, what style you need to write, or whether this is the right theme or the current theme, or no one's copywriting it. So it's like it's the blood and guts of what you're writing, and either people like it or they don't. The worst thing you can do when you write a book is write a boring book.
Yeah.
Okay, because a boring book, no one, boring book is, well, it's dead. It's just whatever. It doesn't matter how good a writer you are. If the book is boring, it's boring. So I'd rather have a book where 99% of people absolutely hate it and 1% love it. Because these days, if you've got 1% of people who love something, it feeds you.
That's a lot.
It doesn't, you don't need everyone to love the book. But
Yeah.
if 99% of people hate it, you're always going to get a small percent who love it. because that's the nature of emotions. That's the visceral reaction. So I've had people say, this is juvenile, this is crap, this is badly written, this is what, who cares? It's good. It's good. As long as you're engendering, as long as there's some form of emotion from your writing, then you know you've written a decent enough book. It's generated emotion of some sort. So I don't even regard myself as a writer, but I don't want to write boring stuff. So if I wrote Gang Fit 5, again, going back to that, I think it will become boring and repetitive. And so I'm not going to do that. And writing a boring book, which is uninteresting, is the worst thing ever. And I don't think you need to be a great writer to write a viscerally impactful book, because it's not about being grammatically perfect or being. That's why I wouldn't even call myself a writer, even though I've written thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of words now. I wouldn't call myself a writer because I haven't got the grammatical skills and I haven't got the writing skills to call myself a good writer. It's like a runner. I'm pretty strict on the definition of a runner.
Mm.
Okay, because I was an athlete, I was a runner. So I think you can only call yourself a runner if you can. Lots of people disagree, and that's fair enough. Okay, but I think if you can't run a marathon in a certain time or a mile, so I wouldn't call you a runner. I might call you a jogger. I might call you something else. So someone says, well, if you run every day, you're a runner, full stop. Okay, that's fair enough. But for me personally, the postmodern idea of you are what you say you are is sort of rubbish. I'm not a painter because I can just put a blob of paint on a canvas. That doesn't make me a painter. Even if I do it every day, if the result is shit, as far as I'm concerned, and I haven't learned any technique or how to construct a drawing or how to prepare a canvas or anything like that, or about brushes or about any of the stuff you need to know as an artist, I don't care how often I paint. I'm not an artist because there's an objective standard as far as I can see. There's an objective. I understand about people's interpretations. So I wouldn't call myself a writer because I think there's an objective standard to writing. However, I might be able to write a book which people like or they don't like, engenders a reaction in emotion. And because I wrote it in some form of, like it was a rant,
Mm.
Gang Fit 1 was basically just a rant. And
Mm.
it wasn't a cohesive flow. It was like short sound bites. So I thought I'd write Gang Fit in like mini essays, sound bite one, sound bite two. And so that when you read it, every paragraph is like a punch in your face,
Yes,
or
that's
a hammer
really
hitting a
powerful.
nail. So that's the way I did it. You've got these
Yeah.
individual essays, and within that, every other line is something you're either going to disagree with or agree, but it will engender something.
Mhm.
You think, oh, that's amazing, or that's shit, or oh, I hadn't thought of that, or this guy's mad, or this is really good, or this is how I think, whatever it is. But every paragraph has got something in it which says something. And I think, but that in itself doesn't make me a grammatically good, writer. How do you construct a sentence? Because I've looked back at Gangfit and some of the sentences, I was like, that's not actually quite right the way you've written it. That's literally the opposite. When you really read it properly, it's the opposite. I'm saying it reads as the opposite is what I'm trying to say, because I'm not a brilliant writer. But you should never stop that making you do things,
Yeah.
because perfection is impossible, and you do get better as you go on and everything. But I just wanted to write how I thought, so all I did is just write how I thought and take out all the unnecessary words as much as possible. And then it's like bang 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 bang, one paragraph hit you, another paragraph hit you, another paragraph, and that's the end of that essay. And then the other essay will be about something, and that will hit you, that will hit you, that you hit you, and then either you like it or you hate it. That's it.
That's powerful. Yeah. And so, Mark, thanks for our conversation here. Where people can find more about your work, and if they want to read your writings, where can they find?
Well, I'm really on X, Elon Musk's X, and so my handle is Guru Anaerobic. Guru, Guru, anaerobic, the opposite of aerobic. So one word, Guru Anaerobic. A lot of people have said, "Well, why do you call yourself a guru?" It's meant to be ironic, yeah. I'm not really
Sure.
a guru of anything. People have messaged me and said, "Well, who do you think you are? You're a guru. Who do you think you're a guru of exercise?" And it's like, it's just a joke, man. I'm not a guru. I'm not being ironic because there's very few gurus around. But the Indian market do like it because they just call me Guruji. They think, ah, guru, this is like a good, nice word and everything. So they just like calling me guru. So it's Guru Anaerobic on X is the main thing. Facebook I don't really use. I've got an Instagram account, but I don't really use it. And so everything's on there, and it's got links on my link in bio thing. It's got links to Amazon, Gumroad, and to books, hard copy books or whatever. But you know, as I say, the account's not just about it's about whatever. It might even be just a cat video or something.
Yeah.
I like that, you know, or something like that, whatever. So yeah, they can get in touch with me there or follow that and maybe follow through for a while and then think, oh, I don't like him, whatever. But yeah, Guru Anaerobic on Twitter X.
That's nice. Thank for your time, Mark. It was really great to meet here in I'll call that in person because we had this opportunity. Thanks. I hope
Julio,
we
thank you
can
very much.
talk more once again
Yeah,
in the future.
it was really nice talking to you, and I hope it's helped some people. I'm not sure which fashion, but hopefully it would help some people. And thank you for talking to me, Julio. It's much appreciated to be invited to speak to you. So yeah, hopefully we'll have another chat sometime in the future.
Thanks. See you next time.
See
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.